We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bring news just for you. It's Friday, March 21st here in Seoul. I'm Song Yujin, and great to have you with us on News Generation. Joining us today is Brooke Prince.
Hello, happy to be here.
Happy Friday, and Yeonbin.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. As our viewers know, every Friday we wrap up the week by discussing issues that resonate with young people around the world. And in South Korea, there's one question that young men inevitably face once they turn 19, which is, when should I enlist in the military? That's because since all able-bodied South Korean males are required to serve for approximately 18 months, this decision weighs heavily on many. But recently, an ongoing debate has gained momentum, which is, should women also be required to serve? So for example, in Taiwan, the idea of extending mandatory military service to women is turning from talk to action. So Wonmin, could you please bring us up to speed on the latest developments in Taiwan?
Absolutely, I can. So last February, the multiple press from Taiwan reported that the Ministry of Defense in Taiwan is reviewing the possibility of women serving in the army. Later on, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Defense announced that it was just under consideration and nothing official was going on or being planned to be executed. However, for countries like Taiwan or Korea or Hong Kong, where we do have national defense issues, it is inevitable for this constant debate of women and men participating in the army together to occur.
Definitely. So as Wonbin just mentioned, mandatory military service isn't unique to South Korea or Taiwan. So we're going to take a look at some other cases. So Brooke, are there any other places where both men and women are required to serve?
Yes, female conscription actually does exist in several countries, and this is driven by both security needs and gender equality efforts. In Israel, for example, women have been required to serve since 1948, primarily in non-combat roles, but an increasing number are now serving in combat units as gender roles evolve and regional conflicts intensify. Sweden reinstated gender-neutral conscription in 2017, with women now making up 16% of conscripts. Ukraine expanded female military service after Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea to strengthen its defense amid ongoing security threats. Meanwhile, North Korea mandates military service for both genders to maintain a large, trained military force. Also, Bolivia, along with Norway and Finland, has integrated women into its military in order to enhance defense readiness. So yes, this debate is happening around the world. Several countries have decided to implement mandatory military service for women, and we'll have to see what the future holds for South Korea in terms of this hot issue.
Right. So before we dive deeper into the bigger picture, we're first going to connect with a Taiwanese Gen Z to hear about what's driving this policy shift and how it's being received in Taiwan. Stay tuned.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search our channel Arirang News. Click Community and leave a comment down below. Make a new type of news with us.
So today we're pleased to welcome Taiwanese Gen Z Tai Yu to the show. Welcome, Tai Yu, to the show. Good morning. So Tai Yu, we'd first like to ask you, what factors led the Taiwanese government to consider extending military conscription to women? Could you provide more explanation on that?
I think there are a few important reasons why Taiwan is thinking about making women serve in the military. And first, Taiwan's birth rate has been decreasing for years, meaning fewer young men are available for military service. And if this continues, Taiwan could face a severe shortage of soldiers, so the government sees women's conscription as one possible way to fix this problem. Second, the situation around Taiwan has been tense recently, especially with China increasing its military actions and making threats near Taiwan's airspace and waters. And because of these increased security threats, the government is considering drafting women to strengthen the military and help protect the country. And third is that Taiwanese society has changed a lot. especially gender equality and equal responsibilities for men and women. People today care more about fairness and equality, and extending conscription to women fits these values. The government sees it as a step forward, more equal participation, and meeting public expectations.
So I'm curious, how has the public reacted? Is there a divide in opinion? And what do younger generations think about this?
Generally, most people in Taiwan support the idea of women's conscription, but opinions are still pretty divided. Recent surveys show about 56% of people support drafting women, mainly because of security issues and changing attitudes toward equality. Given the current situation, those who support it think it's fair and makes sense. However, some people still disagree. They are worried about traditional gender roles, physical differences, or whether the military can effectively handle this change. There are also concerns about how mandatory service might impact women's education, careers, and personal lives. Younger people usually have a more positive attitude toward women serving in the military. They think it's fair, equal, and fits well with modern values. However, even among younger generations, some still have concerns, especially about how practical it would be to implement this change, including training conditions and how it might affect women's futures. And while there's increasing support, people still have mixed feelings, and it's an ongoing discussion.
No, I see. Well, thank you for giving different perspectives about this topic. Now, do you personally think that Taiwan will implement this change in the future?
I personally think Taiwan should carefully consider introducing women's conscription, but it might be better to start with voluntary service first, rather than immediately requiring women to serve. And the government could encourage and offer incentives for women to volunteer. This way, Taiwan can gradually adjust the military's infrastructure, training, and overall environment to better accommodate women. If voluntary enlistment works out well, the idea of mandatory service for women might become more accepted by the public over time. So taking a step-by-step approach can also help to solve the practical problems and give society more time to adapt. I think using a thoughtful and gradual approach might help Taiwan build a stronger and fairer, more effective military force.
All right, Tai, thank you so much for joining our show today and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so as we mentioned at the top of our broadcast, this debate regarding military conscription for women isn't new to Korea. It has been circulating for years, but it kind of was reignited after Taiwanese government. There was news that the Taiwanese government is considering a female military conscription. So Wonbin, can you help us put this discussion into context?
Yeah, it's a very sensitive topic in Korea as well. If not, it's considered like the forbidden topic when you're socializing with people, especially when there's both men and women on the table, because everybody has like such different opinions on it. And again, like you said, this topic has been circulating in Korea for years, if not probably decades, since our parents' generation. And how the topic did come closer to the surface more than ever in 2025. And as a person who completed the military service in the front line, let me give you guys some additional context. So first and foremost, South Korea is in the state of armistice. This means that technically we are still in war. Therefore, as sensitive this topic may be, it is very important for us to clearly discuss the sustainable method of maintaining the national defense of our country. However, recently, due to multiple reasons such as declining birth rate, it is becoming more challenging for Korea to maintain its national defense only with men. And I personally think that having this debate, like young people having this debate or people having this debate, is healthy as long as it is done respectfully and rationally. But inevitably, it does sometimes lead to gender conflicts or inequalities as well. To give some illustration on this hot debate, there were multiple petitions made through the Blue House petition, and one of them for women to be included in the conscription as well. And one of the petition got almost 300,000 signatures, which is a notable number. So this is just one example that shows how much of a hot potato this topic is in Korea.
Right, it is definitely a hotly discussed topic here in the country. So we're now going to break down the public sentiment in South Korea a bit more, and also what the main arguments for and against making military service mandatory for women. So could you please start us off?
So starting with the public sentiment, KBS recently released surprising survey results showing that a majority of Koreans now support mandatory military service for women. So if you take a look at the screen, according to this poll, 54% of respondents were in favor of female conscription, while 34% opposed it and 12% remained unsure. Support was notably higher among men, with 66% in favor and 27% against. But women also responded relatively positively, with an impressive 43% supporting conscription. However, 40% still opposed the idea, so it is still contested. But these results do suggest that younger generations in Korea are maybe becoming more open to the idea of women serving in the military, perhaps potentially as a step towards greater gender equality. And in fact, as mentioned earlier, several countries, particularly in the Nordic region, have already implemented or are moving towards female conscription. And it's for the same reasons, in order to have a more gender-neutral military, to have gender equality. In the Swedish military, for example, gender equality and gender harmony are considered these fundamental principles that actually shape the military operations and the overall service culture. Additionally, Denmark, which previously only allowed voluntary female service, announced plans in 2024 to make it mandatory for women. And again, they said it's because it's for the pursuit of complete gender equality, which of course sounds wonderful, right? But there are drawbacks to making this service mandatory for women, and one of the biggest ones is the safety issues and guaranteeing equal treatment. And I think that we would need to address those in order for this to be a viable option for Korea.
Right, and I now want to ask your personal take on this issue. I think we can get some diverse opinions because, Brooke, you haven't served in the military, but Wonbin, as you mentioned, you served at the front line.
I have.
You finished your mandatory military service?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
So we're first going to start with Brooke. What do you think?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for people in the military, and being an American, I really strongly believe in personal freedom. So I think that women should have equal opportunities to serve, but I don't think anyone, man or woman, should be forced to serve in the military. I've spoken to a lot of Korean men about their time in the military, and many of them talk about it, with a sense of pride that they've fulfilled their national duty, but there's also an underlying sense of resentment and sadness, and I really empathize and understand it because it's a big disruption to someone's life.
Because it's 18 months.
Exactly. It interrupts your career, your social life, everything. So I personally think instead of conscription, voluntary-based military service has many merits, and that's what the U.S. does. And they make it a very appealing career. They offer competitive pay and various benefits, career training. It's all incentives-based, and that's how we get so many recruits. And what this does, it ensures that everyone who joins the military is doing it willingly. And that means that the force is going to be more motivated, there's better morale, better performance. And so I would love to see South Korea to at least consider the idea of a volunteer-based military service. That way they could preserve the national security while also respecting people's personal and individual freedom.
We'll have to see where this heads. And what do you think, Wonbin?
Well, as a Korean man who served the army, I feel like there's a puzzle in front of me and I have to solve it very carefully. Like my hands are sweating. But
a very tricky question, isn't it?
I'll try my best. So to address the elephant in the room, so do I think if women should serve in the army? The short answer is no. However, I do think that they must be prepared to protect themselves if the worst scenario happens. And let me carefully elaborate on my answer. So obviously, there will be exceptions, but I personally believe that men and women do have some differences in physical capabilities, and that is that generally, men are stronger than women. And because of this, I believe that most men are more suitable to serve, to do their duty in the army compared to women. However, this doesn't mean that women will be safe from wars or any battles or combats. Therefore, I think the Ministry of Defense of Korea must come up with a relatively shorter training program for about 2 to 3 months that can help women to learn the basic knowledge of combat and battles as well. So for example, let's say worst case scenario, like there are no soldiers around you and all you have is a weapon or a pistol or a frag grenade. You at least have to know like how to hold a gun or what a bullet looks like and what it feels like. Yeah, how to load it into the magazine and how to load it or how to pull out the pin from the grenade. It's just to do the basic minimum of protecting yourself. Yeah. And I personally never complain about women not serving in the army, but because, like we mentioned, South Korea is still in the state of war, I think it is crucial that every single person in Korea knows how to protect themselves when the time comes.
Right. I think self-defense is so empowering,
It is, definitely. And I think that not many people actually know how to use those weapons, like the basic knowledge.
Yeah, it's difficult to know without any hands-on experience.
Definitely. All right. So for more opinion, we asked our viewers if they think women should be required to serve in the military. And here are the results of our Arirang News YouTube poll. So 65% said yes, while 35% said no. And here are some comments. Our first comment for this Friday is by Kim Tae-ri. Korean men cut back their university education to serve in the military. This makes it harder to find a job when you get out because your work skills in your field have dropped behind by 18 to 22 months. CKATKF26 says in modern society, gender equality should extend to national duties as well. If men must serve, women should also contribute equally to the country's defense. His Minai 7397 says no, because no one should be forced. So based on our poll, we can see that more than a half of our viewers who voted in the survey, they say they are for female military conscription. So looking ahead, do you think South Korea will actually implement this female conscription? And what do you think the future of Korea's mandatory military service will look like?
Well, I think female conscription in South Korea is uncertain. The future is very uncertain, but it's a very relevant topic. I'm glad we're talking about it today. And I think it is a very real possibility if things don't change. We talk about it a lot, but Korea has a very low and steadily declining birth rate, which means that the military continuously faces these growing manpower shortages. So advocates of mandatory female conscription say, well, here's a way to address that problem and also promote equality at the same time, while others like myself argue that transitioning to an all-volunteer military instead would be perhaps the better option. So against the backdrop of this hot debate, alternatives like recruiting perhaps foreign mercenaries that may become necessary. I do think if we decide to implement the female conscription here, it has to include strict protections against gender-based violence and harassment. There needs to be avenues for people to go to if something happens to them in the service. You have to make sure that it is a safe environment for everyone. So I really hope that no matter which path that Korea goes down, it's fair and equitable for everyone. That's my hope. I can't see the future, but yeah, that's my dream for Korea.
I mean, I feel like this topic requires a lot of discussions for us to effectively navigate through and reach a conclusion, right?
Right. Well, it's like our interview guest. She said, I don't think that should happen overnight. It needs to be a very gradual
step-by-step
change
process.
Because it would be a huge deal in Korea, right? It's been only men for all of this time. I think they do need to talk about it quite a lot.
It will definitely be a big change for both males and females. So now I want to ask the same question to Wonbin.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you guys. And because of those reasons, which I will explain shortly later, I think shifting to voluntary military service is more realistic than including women to serve in the army. Because I can give you guys some insights here because I've been to the army before, but another small thing to point out is the lack of infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying this is bad, but this is just because of the characteristics that the army had.
The history.
Yeah, the facilities or buildings or barracks in the army or any military bases, it's very difficult to find basically bathrooms or lockers or shower booths, that the areas that are gender sensitive, it's very hard to find them divided. So for example, let's say there's one building of a full barracks where like 200 people would sleep and eat. There would be maybe one bathroom area where it's divided for men and women, and the rest would just be like a co-ed bathroom. So it's going to take a lot of time if women in general begin to participate in the army. So instead of that, I think that voluntary system would be much more efficient and less time consuming as well, because there will be less adapts that we would have to make. And I agree with everything that Brooke said earlier, and one thing that I want to point out furthermore is the proper reward and the respect. All individuals serving in the army must receive social respect and the proper compensation for them to be motivated to have pride in defending their own country, especially if we move to a voluntary system.
Right, definitely a lot of more respect needed for those in uniform. And that's all we have for today and this week for News Generation, but we will be back next Monday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks to Brooke Prince.
It was a great discussion.
Thank you. And Yuan Bin.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. And to our viewers, thank you for staying with us, and hope you join us next week as well. We are News Generation.